What is up? What is up, guys? What is going on out there today? It is Brent Abel here at webtennis.com. And yeah, kind of a open mic today. We're doing a little kind of open mic Q&A session, whatever's on your mind. Would love to know what part of your game you are working on right now. And if you've got any questions about that or some other part of your game, I would love to know. Until we get started, I'm going to get started here in just about 60 seconds. When you get logged on, would love to know where you are today. Just go ahead and type that into the chat area, wherever you are, either over at Facebook or YouTube. Would love to know where you are today. So, guys, let's give this another 30 seconds. And again, really, this is just an open mic. What's on your mind today? If you just want to kind of hang out and listen in, that's cool. That's fine too. If there's nothing really pressing that you've got a question about, I do have a few questions already kind of loaded up through email this morning that I'm going to get to. But let's give it another, what do we got here? Another 20 seconds or so. And then we'll get rolling. Hope you guys are doing well. I'm down here in the California desert, Rancho Mirage, California, the Mission Hills Country Club. And, another gorgeous day down here, mid-80s. That's the deal in the desert. November, yeah, it's pretty darn good. So, well, look, let's get rolling. And again, guys, thanks for hanging out with me today. One of the first things I want to talk about is when we get into matches, especially with an unknown opponent, is to stop thinking so much about stroke technique and tactics and strategy that is all about you, where you're centering everything on your game, right? Where you've got to come up with good stroke technique. You've got to come up with good tactics and strategies and all that kind of stuff. Because you know what? I found this, lots of times where my plan A, my best game would be, well, back in the day, it was primarily serve and volley. But against some opponents, serve and volley was exactly what they wanted me to do. And at the time, I really didn't have a plan B. And for me, what I've learned that a plan B is, well, wait a minute, let's just kind of back off this thing a little bit. Let's get the focus off of ourselves and let's put the focus onto our opponents and find out what's that one thing that your opponent is hoping that you don't give them. Whether it's, it could be that there's one side, a forehand or backhand, that's kind of weaker. They're hoping that you don't discover what that is. But as you get better, as you become more skilled, those two sides seem to kind of balance out. There's typically one side that's a little bit better than the other. But maybe it's not so much about a weaker forehand or backhand. Maybe it's more about what part of the court do they not really want to move into, right? If they're primarily a baseline player and there are times when they hit a really good shot to a corner and you go over there and you're praying that they're not moving forward, right, to try to cut off your time. And the next thing you do is you look up and they're still back there behind the baseline. Well, for me, even if I lose that point, you know what I'm thinking about? Well, maybe this opponent doesn't really want to come up to net, doesn't want to be up in the forecourt. And so what I'm going to start doing is throwing in some drop shots. I'm going to probe, going to find out, well, what part of the court do they not want to visit? And you know what? It might be a strategy where rather than you moving them from side to side, from one corner to one corner, where they get comfortable back there, right? So easy for players to move side to side. Much tougher for players to have to move up, do something with retrieving a drop shot, and then when you get whatever they give you, unless it's a completely wide open where you can just throw it into the wide open court, but then you just lob over their backhand and you make them move up and back. And you know what you might discover is that's the one movement pattern that they don't like. So start thinking about how could you look at your opponent's game and just go, well, wait a minute. I see that this one area of the game they don't want me to know about, or they want me to, avoid. They would rather have me come out with my plan A because for some reason, whatever, for them, that works a whole lot better for their game. So just a little kind of, initial topic today before I get to your questions, which is stop putting so much pressure on yourself that you've got to control everything with great stroke technique, with great tactics and strategies, especially if it's feeding into really what their strengths are. And start probing, start looking for what they don't like. And what it could be less about where you're going to move them, and it could be more about where you're simply going to move. I think we talked about this the other day with approach shots. A lot of Tom Stowe told me back in the day, the really good players become human when you force them to have to thread the needle often enough in a match, whether it's up the line or cross court or that little, topspin lob over you. Sure, you're going to lose a few points along the way, but in the long run, that may be the thing that they don't want to have to do, which is to have to come up with the goods over and over and over again, which would be, an outright winner. So look, I'm going to, guys, if you've got a question, just go ahead and type it into the comments area and let me know. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is I want to answer a couple questions here today that I got early. One was from Ricky over on Facebook. Ricky, a nice player. And, he said that, trying to be less passive with his slice backhand return so I don't start every point on the defense. And so my thought was, well, look, rather than trying to, top it and drive it and all that stuff, why not just take the return and let's just see if we can't get it consistently deeper. And consistently deeper does not mean that you've got to hit it harder. Doesn't mean that you've got to be, flirting with the top of the net with, more pace just to get it deep. It simply means that all you got to do is aim higher over the white line. The white line, of course, is the top of the net, right? And for me, that's such a more tangible target in terms of it's much closer to me, right? It's like when golfers have a long putt, what do? Well, the golfer figures out what's the line they want that putt to travel on, and then they bring their target back to something that's maybe 5 feet in front of them, which is a whole lot closer than, let's say, it's a 30-foot putt. Well, if you think about your target in terms of trying to go for depth from baseline to baseline is 78 feet, that's a pretty long target. And to me, it's way more tangible to think about, well, what's a height? What's a little window over the top of the net that I want to play my backhand slice return to serve so that it's consistently going deep? And you got to tinker with it. Yours might be slightly different than mine and slightly different than Ricky's and so on down the line. But you've got to sort of tinker with your target being a spot over the top of the net and not thinking so much that the way you get the shot deep and not have to play defense is by hitting the ball harder. It's just simply, can you consistently get that thing to land deep to the baseline? And if you can do that, you're going to produce a ton of offensive opportunities off of that return to serve, which is you really haven't hit the ball any harder. You haven't risked trying to, go with a topper backhand return to serve or a flat or whatever it is, or just, really trying to knife that slice so much harder. Just aim higher over the top of the net. Find that window that works for you. And, it might be different in the deuce court than it is in the ad court. I can't tell you. You're going to have to get out there and tinker with it. But the message on this is two things. Number one, well, what can you do to consistently get that return to serve to land deeper? And it doesn't matter how you get it there, right? You can slice it, you can chip it, whatever it is. And then the second thing is the way you do it is with that target, which is not thinking depth, but it's thinking what's the height over the top of that white line, right? Top of the net. If you think about it, when we go out in the backboard of the wall to practice, there's only one thought in our mind, no matter what shot we're hitting. That's just hit the ball over the top of that painted line on the backboard of the wall. There's no thought of where it's going to land, behind the wall. All we're trying to do is just hit the ball above the top of that white line. So my my suggestion, Ricky, is try this. Is just go ahead and think of the net being a white line, the top of the net being a white line. It's just a backboard. Can you get the ball up on that backboard, up on that wall, a certain height above that white line? Deanne emailed today, and she was asking about, I'm trying to learn the skill of moving my feet. I get planted after I hit the ball to watch, trying to anticipate where my opponent's going to hit the ball. I can't seem to get the hang of the split step and moving. And so, there's this big thing on, well, when do we split step? How do we split step? And it doesn't really get into the whole purpose of, first of all, what's the purpose of the split step? Well, the purpose of the split step is to be able to choose instantly the ball's on my right or the ball's on my left, right? It's either going to be, if you're right hand, it's either going to be a forehand, it's going to be a backhand. Occasionally the ball's played directly at you, and you have to choose, depending on where you are on the court, well, I'm going to have to get out of the way of that ball and choose right or choose left, which is going to be forehand or backhand. So the purpose of the split step is to put you into that position athletically with your legs so that you can create that space if you need to, whether you got to move to your right, whether you got to move to your left, or whether you have to get out of the way of the ball. But the key is to help you make that choice instantaneously. And so rather than thinking about the timing of it, here's what I coached Deanne on this morning back through email. And that was a couple things. Is number one, because you're concerned about this, because you're trying to figure out, how to split step, because you're trying to figure out the timing of split step, what we do is we get tense, we get tight, we get grippy on the racket. And all that tension, and I'm not saying, Deanne, that's what's happening, but it could be that you've got too much grip tension, too much grip pressure on your racket handle because you're trying to figure this thing out. And the more you try to figure it out that way consciously, typically what happens with players, they get a little bit grippy on the racket. So my first thing is to tell you that when you go out, next time you're on the court, especially when you're warming up, is to be aware of are you clenching the racket too tightly in your ready position? You go ahead and let's say you play a forehand example, and then you're coming back to your ready position. Are you getting really tense with your hands on the racket handle, and maybe the throw of the racket, or wherever you place your non-dominant hand on the racket? You've got to make sure that you're not clenching, because if you are, you're going to be much slower to react to the ball on your right and to your left. You're going to be much slower to starting your turn, to get prepared to getting into the hitting position that you want for either forehand or backhand. Are going to be a lot slower getting out of the way of the ball that's played directly at you. So that is thing number one, is to make sure you've got a really light grip. I mean, look, the only time you need to firm up the grip, and we never need to go death grip, but there's only one moment, and that's sometimes just right prior to contact, right? Could be like on a, you're up at net and the ball's just crushed at you, and you got to kind of firm up the racket to kind of, give the incoming ball kind of a wall to bounce against. But typically on forehands and backhands, you don't need to get strong on the grip, especially at contact. I mean, we want to generate some racket speed, and the way you generate racket speed is with a lot more of a relaxed grip tension as you pass the racket through contact. So that would be thing one. The next thing I would have you do, once you're aware of making sure that your hands are nice and relaxed as that opponent makes contact, is that as they make contact, just tell yourself to move or go, or whatever word works for you, so that you are thinking about that exact moment in time when they're making contact, that you're actually telling yourself to do something, right? And that, I know that sounds a little obvious, but rather than trying to anticipate so much, an anticipation of where your opponent is about to play their next shot is a whole nother topic that we can get into in a different time. And the timing of the split step is, as I was saying, I think a few episodes ago, is that the further away my opponent is from me when they make contact, I can actually split step a little bit later. The closer I am, I've got to split step a little bit sooner. Sometimes that split step happens right at the moment they make contact. And sometimes if there's really a long distance between us, I can actually split step a little bit later. I don't have to split step right at the moment. And if I'm really close, if it's, both players are up at net and doubles, let's say, and there's an exchange, I might split step, even before they make contact. So, but the key is that you start to tell yourself to move or to go. And I would say for right now, just simply do it right as that opponent makes contact. Okay, so, and guys, again, if you've got a question, just let me know in the comment section. Would love to know and help you out today. So, Joe over at Facebook earlier today was talking about coaching a spouse and his lovely wife, and she's just getting started in the game, and he's a little concerned, as he should be, that maybe it's not the greatest thing to do to be coaching, especially tennis, your spouse. And so my response was this: look, it's great that the two of you can get out in the court together. Absolutely cool. And look, if you go out there and you try a few little coaching things, a little help, a little tip here and there, fine and dandy. But you're going to know if your spouse who's just starting to play is having fun if they ask you in the next day or two, hey, that was great, let's go do it again, I want to go out there again. Then you know that you don't have to go any further, because the real coaching ought to be done by someone else. I mean, the real coaching ought to be done literally by someone else. I just look, I mean, I've tried it with my kids, and my wife is a 5-0 player, and I've actually tried to help her with a couple of things, and she's been open and receptive to it. But sometimes I've stepped over the boundary, and it just hasn't worked out. And look, we've won, what's the count now, 6 national husband-wife gold balls, and the first couple of years, it took us a couple of years to kind of get organized. And most of it was my fault, because I wanted it so bad for her. I wanted success for her so much that I was trying to coach her, trying to tell her what to do. And look, she's already a top player. She's one of the top players in our age group every time we play a tournament. And so I had to back off and just trust that if I didn't coach her, that at that level that she would be fine and we would be fine as a doubles team. But as I was coaching Joe this morning, going, look, at the difference between where, Joe, you're a really good player, you've been playing the game forever, your wife is just getting started, the last thing you want is to kind of sour the game for her, because you want it so bad. You want her to, even if you just want her to come out and spend time with you on the court, I get it. But I would really be focused much more on what can you do to help her have fun, and let her lead the charge in terms of, hey, would you help me with this? Would you help me with that? You can make a suggestion when she does, but I certainly wouldn't be initiating coaching other than, hey, if you love this, honey, how about we go get some real coaching for you? And look, I mean, even if you're in the business, it's tricky. It's really, really tricky. So, guys, what else? Anything else on your mind out there today? Let me just go check email, because I did have an email request that I did not write down, and I want to make sure here we go. Okay, yeah. So John is asking about, I think it's his spouse as well, that she likes to volley with 2 hands. And so, is that and she's not, she's struggling with it. And look, that was one of the mistakes I think I made with when we first, started dating and we started playing. Is she's got a good two-handed backhand volley. It's not what I teach, right? It's not obviously not the traditional type of backhand volley, but so I was trying to help her. I was saying, well, here's how I teach the backhand volley. She tried it, didn't really work, and finally, when I just stopped worrying about it and just started saying, look, I think you got a great two-handed backhand volley. There's no, you look at, there have been some players on the Pro Tour who've made scads of money as doubles players with playing a two-handed backhand volley, whether it's in the women's game, Fru McMillan back in the day. Come on, Jeannie Mayer. Come on. These guys could play. These guys were obviously top world-class doubles players. So my advice on that, John, is to encourage her to continue to play with what she feels most comfortable with. Once she gets to a certain skill level, it could be that she wants to do a little bit more. She, not you, she wants to do more with her backhand volley, and then go get her some coaching. I wouldn't, again, I guess I've learned from my own experience that and we've done it. We've gone to Dennis Ralston before. We went to Michael Wayman. And you know what? My wife just came away with just going, I just feel really comfortable with the backhand volley. So why change? And there's no reason that she should change. Have volleys get trickier with two hands, but it's kind of like, is it worth the effort to kind of do the major surgery for a couple of years of abandoning a two-handed backhand volley or a two-handed forehand volley, two-handed half volley? Is it worth that effort for a couple of years to, go ahead and go through the surgery? I don't know. Sometimes I just don't think it's worth it. If you've got a young junior, then maybe it is. It might be. I don't know. So guys, that's it for today. A couple things before I let you go here is that, one of the things I've been talking a lot about lately is fitness for tennis, and specifically trying to get the kitchen right. If you really want to play at a higher level, if you're not satisfied with where you are right now, you could work on technique for forever. You could work on tactics and strategy, but if you don't have good health, general health, and if you don't have good tennis fitness, meaning maybe you need to shed some pounds and maybe you need to get a little bit quicker, build up some endurance, whatever it is, then that would be the fastest way to get better, because this is not like golf where the ball's sitting there and you get to walk up to it and kind of get yourself all set and all that. It's not like that at all. We got to move. We got to visually track a moving tennis ball as we're on the move. And if you get fitter, guess what? You make better visual contact with a moving tennis ball as you're on the move. And what does that all mean? Well, that all means that your spacing, the spatial distance away from the path of that incoming ball, is consistently better based on your unique swing style for, let's say, your forehand or backhand. And it just means that your contact point is more consistent. All that means is that now all that stuff creates stroke mechanic consistency, which means that you produce a whole lot less unforced errors. You just make more shots, right? And you can do it over the course of a long match, and that's always a good thing. So, look, I don't know if you're into fitness or health, and if you're not, that's up to you. That's fine. I am. It's really helped me, especially over the last couple of years. It's been almost 3 years. My wife and I changed the way we eat back in February 2018. And for the last 2.5 years, I've far and away had my best results as a tournament player in terms of gold balls, silver balls, playing captain the USA World Cup team, 2018, 2019. And it's all because, and I'd already been pretty fit, but man, I just found out that I had some unneeded just stuff, gunk. And I shed about 8 or 9 pounds, and it's made a huge difference for me. So look, and again, if you're not in this stuff, that's fine. That's cool. If you want to get some recommendations, I'm more than happy to do that for you. Just go ahead and you can either private message me, depending on where you are, direct message me over at Facebook, or if you want to shoot me an email, brent@webtennis.com, you can do that as well. And I'm more than happy to tell you what I'm doing. And one of the big things that's happened for me in the last 7 months, because I play a ton of tennis, as you know, I do a lot of off-court training as well, just because I want to play at the very top of my age group year in and year out. I was having to take 2 or 3 ibuprofen every day just to knock off the systemic soreness that I was producing, all the inflammation I was producing, just because of all the activity. And I knew for years, no bueno, this is not great. I got to find something else. So I got turned on to something back in April of this year that has really helped me. It is a supplement. It's a legal, organic supplement, but has really helped me. And I've not had any ibuprofen, no anti-inflammatories for 7+ months. Pretty darn happy about that. So if that's one of the things that you're struggling with, shoot me an email, brent@webtennis.com, or just send me a direct message over at Facebook, and let's get together and I'll tell you what I'm doing. Might work for you, might not, who knows? But that's it, guys. So listen, as always, hey, thanks for hanging out with me today. Any other questions you've got about your tennis game, either go ahead and throw them in the comments wherever you are, Facebook and or YouTube, or you can direct message me or shoot me that email, brent@webtennis.com. Guys, thanks very much. We'll do this again tomorrow. In the meantime, get out there today and help someone else have a spectacular day.